Hi community of awesome, I'm Ava J and this is Bookish Pixie. So lately I've been seeing a lot of writers asking whether or not they should pursue a project they love despite the fact that it's in a tough to sell genre. Some of these manuscripts are in what the publishing industry calls dead genres, which are basically genres that are extremely difficult to sell in. For example, after the vampire craze, paranormal became a dead genre and is still basically considered a dead genre. After the Hunger Games and Divergent, dystopia became a dead genre and it's still considered a dead genre. Oftentimes these dead spaces or really hard to sell in spaces come after a really big boost in that genre. This happens because when one genre becomes really popular, it also becomes really oversaturated with books. There's no way of predicting, however, when a genre will become dead or which genre will be the dead one next or when a genre will become undead. So oftentimes what happens is a writer will be working on their book and they really love it and then they start to hear that the genre they're writing in is really hard to sell right now. So here's the reality. Selling a book for publication is always difficult. If you're a YA, that is young adult writer, then it's especially difficult because YA is a really crowded market. And that means YA in any genre, whether it's contemporary or paranormal or historical or sci-fi or whatever. That said, there are some genres in YA that are more difficult to sell than others, which really just brings us back to the beginning of this vlog. So here's the truth. If you find that you're writing in a genre that has been considered dead, then it is going to be really hard for you to sell. That being said, it's going to be hard for you to sell anyway, and the important thing is that you love your story. It's really good to be aware of what's going on in the market and what's selling and whatnot so that you can manage your expectations. But it shouldn't really influence what you're writing. The reason I tend to advise writers not to base what they're writing on the market is because the market changes. For example, contemporary and YA right now is super big, but by the time you finish writing your contemporary novel, it might not be. The thing to remember is the books that are releasing now generally sold a year to 2 years ago. So the trends you're seeing on the shelves now were really trends 2 years ago. And yeah, while those books are selling really well, it'll be a little bit easier to sell your book if your book is in the same genre and if you manage to time it right. But if you start writing your book at the height of a genre explosion, by the time you finish writing your book and it's ready to query, that explosion is probably going to be on the declining end. In the end, agents, editors, and readers don't fall in love with genres, they fall in love with stories. So if you write a book that you absolutely love and it's the book you've always wanted to write and you find an agent who also loves your book, then even if your book is a little difficult to sell, the agent is going to do their best to sell it. Like always, you don't have any guarantees, but ultimately, it's the story that matters. So if you have a book idea that you absolutely love and it's in a dead genre but it's calling you to write it, then write it. You don't know what the state of the market is going to be like by the time your book is ready to query. And if you're passionate about your book, then other people are going to notice too. On the flip side, what you don't want to do is write a book just because something is popular right now. A, because like I said earlier, what's popular then may not be popular by the time you finish writing your book, and B, because your heart won't be in it and people will see that. When I wrote the book that became Beyond the Red, I knew that it was by no stretch of the imagination going to be an easy sell. And when my agent read it and loved it, she knew that too. But I'm so glad that I went with my instinct and wrote it anyway because it was a book that I wanted to read and it was a book that I wanted to write. And yeah, it wasn't easy, but it did sell. But if I had talked myself out of writing that book because it wouldn't be an easy sell, then I wouldn't have a book to share with you guys next year. So the point I'm trying to make is you should write for yourself first. Don't worry about the market and don't worry about what's selling and what's not. Just write your book. And maybe it'll sell and maybe it won't, but you won't have lost anything because you'll learn from the experience of writing. And if in the end you have to put your manuscript away, that's okay too. You never know when you're going to be able to pull it back out again. So that's all I got for today. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe and comment, and I'll see you guys next week.